Okay, so welcome to Beers with Brownie. We are an International Rugby League YouTube series where we like to highlight the unsung heroes of International Rugby League, people that put their blood, sweat and tears into growing the sport around the world so more people can enjoy it all over. Okay, so guys, for every 100 subscribers until we hit 1,000, we're sending out 10 balls to developing International Rugby League nations to help them. So our first 10 went to Vanuatu. Then next 10 went to Ghana, got 10 going to Cameroon, and our next target's 400 subscribers. So once we hit 400, we'll send another 10 out. And please drop a comment to tell us where you think they should go. If we can actually get to 10,000 subscribers, I know it might be a long way off, but you never know, and we can monetize this channel, we're going to help fund the Solomon Islands domestic competition in the way of resource, coach education, and whatever we can do to help get their domestic competition thriving. Okay, so I'd like to welcome our guest for this episode, Latin Heat co-founder and heavily involved with Brazil Rugby League, Rob Burgin. So Rob, thanks for your time, for coming on the episode.
Good to see you again, Brownie. Cheers.
Always welcome. So Rob and I, we met a few years back in person. We've always known of each other. Well, I've known of you.
Yep.
Don't know whether you knew of me, but yeah. We met a few years ago in my hometown, Manly, of all places, and beautiful Manly Wharf. And we meet again here in Brisbane. We're shooting at Magic Round, the Magic Round weekend. So yeah, thanks again, Rob.
Oh, awesome.
So each episode, we like to support a beer that supports rugby league. And I know Rob's not going to be happy with this, because we're going with VB for this episode, so I apologise in advance, Rob. So VB, they're a big supporter of rugby league in regards to some junior teams, local competitions, as well as the New South Wales Blues. I know Rob is a proud Queenslander, but I'm from New South Wales, so we're going with VB. So cheers, Rob. Thanks for coming on again.
This is my greatest sacrifice for International Rugby League. So.
you heard it here first. Yeah. Okay, and every episode I like to support an International Rugby League nation by wearing their merch, and it's only fitting that we go with Brazil Rugby League today. The women's team have made the World Cup and the men's game is thriving over in Brazil, which we will talk about. So I'm going with Brazil today, guys. So my first question, Rob, how did you fall in love with rugby league and which club did you support as a kid?
Okay, there's probably three ways at this, but I'll try and keep it as brief as possible. So the first time I saw rugby league and became intrigued by it, I was living in Toowoomba as a kid, and I was walking down the street and saw like a school playing it, and I just loved the impact and momentum of it. So I started following Toowoomba Clydesdales.
Right.
Then I guess the second progression of that was a couple of years later. I was sitting at my grandparents' house watching a state league game, the old ones where they would wear the Colonel Sanders logo on all the jerseys.
Yep.
And Gene Miles scored 3 tries and kicked a bunch of goals from the sideline, and Wynnum Manly beat Ipswich by some big score.
Right.
And that was kind of the first game, like high level, that I remember watching vividly. And so Gene Miles became my favourite player, and then Wynnum Manly was my favourite team.
Nice.
But I moved over to the western suburbs of Brisbane.
Yeah.
And then I actually, when I came through, I was more of an academic at school, and then I went through a bit of a growth spurt. And we used to play this game with youth group after class, where we'd throw a tennis ball, and we had like a double-sized classroom, and you had to try and get from one end to the other without people stopping you. And I wasn't sort of really big on, trusting myself in that environment before, but I just found I was really good at carrying people across the field. And then my mates said to me, come play club rugby league, and that's where I really fell in love with it. And I think, to be honest, I think rugby league changed the course of my life. Like maybe a lot different person, and gave me a huge amount of friends, so always indebted to the sport.
So how old were you when you played your first game?
First game of club football would have been like 14, but first game of school football would have been maybe 10 or something like that. So
okay, awesome.
Yeah, we used to play 3 games a day, so it'd take 3 changes of clothes played before school, at lunch, and after school.
Wow.
My mum hated it because she had to wash all my clothes.
So Rob, you finished playing up as a 40-year-old at West Mitchelton Panthers.
Yeah.
And just a quick shout out, same club that produced Uruguay head coach Adam Wright. So Righty, if you're watching, shout out to you. And also USA Hawks international Christian Freed, who I worked with at the 2017 World Cup. Yep. So Freedy, if you're watching, shout out to you as well. So you played at this club.
And California Rugby League founder Tommy Stevenson.
He was from West Mitchelton.
He's in the same team as all 3 of us, yeah.
Wow, what a club. Shout out to West Mitchelton Panthers. Yeah, Panthers.
Yep.
So you played your last game as a 40-year-old, Rob. I played my last game at 33, and I tell you, it took me a long time to recover after each game. So what was it like playing as a 40-year-old?
Yeah, getting pretty sore, and I've maintained a few injuries because of going that long. Actually, a little bit of an annex. I played one game this year in Brazil. I played the men's game, but I refereed the first 75 minutes and then swapped on a jersey and played the last 5. So 5 minutes is about all I've got these days, yeah.
You woke up sore still the next morning?
Yeah, pretty much.
So, Rob, you were the first Brisbane Broncos webmaster. So tell us how that all came about.
Yeah, I'd actually scored a gig at Rugby League week before I started at the Brisbane Broncos. And so I did journalism at university, and being persistent and a little bit crazy, I used to send Tony Durkin a story every week for 2 years.
Wow.
And just send him emails and follow-ups. And I didn't hear back from him like 80% of the time. And then one day he had to go to Sydney for something, and there was a Queensland Cup game on, and he said, "Can you cover it for me?"
Wow.
So I went to that and managed to get like a few scoops about player signings out of it. And then Durko said, come back. And so I worked for like another 2 years for Rugby League week for $200 a week or something like that. It was very small. And while I was there, the Broncos kind of saw I was coming through, and they said, "Would you help look after the website?" So that's kind of how I got on that track.
So just in regards to your journalism, Rob, you did 35 years combined between the Rugby League week and the Rugby League coaching manual.
Yeah.
So tell us about that experience.
Yeah, Rugby League week was my dream job. So when I went to university, it was with the express goal of getting a job at Rugby League week. So most people want to work for ABC or, like maybe a current affair or something like that. And I was like Rugby League week, and that was it. And all my assignments would be about rugby league. And my teachers would be like, "You're going to pigeonhole yourself. Something chronic, stop doing rugby league all the time." Yeah. But I was determined, and when I got the job, it was actually funny because I'd wanted it so bad that after a couple of years, I was like, where to now? I didn't really know what I wanted to do next. So getting involved with other magazines like Rugby League Coaching Magazine, I was doing them at the same time, and then working for AAP at the same time, and News Corp, etc. Because Rugby League Week's a weekly magazine. It's easy to work for a bunch of companies at the same time. So kind of had a finger in lots of pies at that point in time. But Rugby League Coaching Manual, I think, has a lot to do with what I'm doing now with Brazil, because sitting and writing all the yearbooks, etc., I just learnt a lot about the sport from a coach's perspective, which is what I'd always enjoyed as well.
Oh, awesome. So Rob, 2004 to 2008, you are the QRL media manager.
Yep.
So tell us about what do you have to do on a day-to-day basis, and what did the role entail?
Sure. I guess it's basically answering any queries you get from the media, writing stories so people can consume it and become interested in the various competitions, breaking news as it happens, collecting scores from around the state, looking after social media. One of my proudest achievements while I was at QRL was getting everyone onto social media. So you can think 2004 was kind of when Facebook came out.
Yeah.
And I remember walking into a boardroom which is like Ross Livermore, John McDonald, a couple of guys who were from like Country Rugby League, saying there's this thing called Facebook and we should get onto it. And the looks around the room were pretty much like, I don't know what he's talking about, but they trusted me. And to be honest, I was the first person that was given that role, and that's because Ross, he'd trusted me from years before when I'd sort of been working for Rugby League Week. Shout out to Ross. Ross, God rest his soul, was very close to him, and I think he did a lot for the sport that we're only starting to see now.
And his son is involved with one of the bids, is that correct?
Yeah, so he was involved with Brisbane Bombers, which is now turning into Ipswich or Western Corridor Jets.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
Brisbane Jets.
So Rob, in 2013, you are the co-founder of the Latin Heat, which has now later on spawned nations such as Peru, El Salvador, just to name a few, which is fantastic for the game. How did you go about getting this off the ground, and how did it all come to fruition?
Sure. Initially, so I wrote to Taz Batiri and I said, look, I'm really interested in starting it for Latin America, because I'd noticed when I was working at QRL there were people coming through the system who had heritage in different parts of South and Central America and could go no further. One of my best mates as a kid was Argentinian, and I'd always felt a little bit indebted and wanted to see his family involved in the sport that I love. because I loved watching Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, etc. play soccer.
Yeah.
And I wanted that same flair in our sport. So I said to Taz, like, I just really want to run with it. And then he said, I've got this guy who has an Ecuadorian partner, Matthew Brown. And then he introduced me to him. So we kind of started working.
Right.
And then I went on a coaching refresher course. And the guy taking the course, his name was Daniel Sarmiento. And I was like, well, Sarmiento's got to be Latino for starters. But he looked kind of Tongan. So it was really weird. I had to walk up to him after the session. I was like, look, I'm just wondering, are you from South America? And he was like, oh, actually, I am. He's like, everyone tells me that I'm Tongan all the time, but I'm actually from Colombia. And he was working as an NRL development officer at the time.
Right.
I don't think anyone knew that we had an NRL development officer that could speak Spanish, was born in Colombia. And I just felt that was a massively utilised resource. So the three of us together started gathering interest and gathering together as many players as we could find with heritage from South and Central American countries.
Fantastic, and obviously still going today. With youth sides, it's fantastic to see. And my hat goes off to all you guys. So, Rob, my next question is: you're heavily involved with Brazil Rugby League. How did Brazil Rugby League get off the ground? So
there was a bunch of guys who wanted to start a thing called Capital Rugby League in Sao Paulo in about 2013, and this was at the same time that Latin Heat was starting up.
Right.
So we kind of encouraged them, gave them a bit of direction, some different things about the rules and promotion, and then they'd capitalised because Sports Plus was playing NRL Live at the time, and the Roosters won in 2013. And Sonny Bill Williams was playing for the Roosters. So you had like a big star at the game playing with a big name club, winning the grand final in a pretty exciting contest as well.
Yeah.
So for everyone in Brazil, that captured their attention. And then there became actually 4 pockets of competition, but they were so far apart they could never compete together.
Right.
But all 4 people that were running it were all Roosters fans because of Sonny Bill Williams and because of the Roosters winning it.
Wow, what a story.
Yeah, we had to bring it together, and that person was Hugo Flores, who's now Chief Operating Officer of Brazil Rugby League and running the World Cup campaign, and he deserves all the credit possible because bringing together people from across Brazil, which is the same size as Australia geographically, is a huge task, especially when it's a brand new sport.
So we're talking like equivalent of a team in Sydney, a team in Broome, a team in Cairns, that sort of
it's big
spread out.
Big spread. So Molina, that competed in the semi-finals this weekend, travelled by bus 32 hours to get there, and we'll travel 32 hours back by bus.
Wow, what a big effort. So if any of you players are watching, like fantastic, that's massive commitment, so well done. So Rob, the Brazil Amazonas, as they're called, the women's team, have qualified for this year's Rugby League World Cup. What can we expect? Will they shock the world like the USA Hawks did in 2013? And, are we expecting them to turn some heads?
Yeah, I think we won't get too far ahead of ourselves, but if you look at the record books and how quickly some of the other developing female teams have come along, there's a lot of promise there. Canada made the semi-finals in their first crack at it at a World Cup. PNG went from not winning a game to beating England. So I think, there's every possibility, and they're 2 of the teams we'll face, and we'll face England as well. One of the comments that was made, we had an IRL delegation come to Brazil, and we taught in schools together with Lois Forcell, the player from Leeds Rhinos female team, and she previously played for England. And she just said one of the things she noticed was really the athletic ability of the players, even though they didn't know the game. Children in Brazil spend so much time outside and playing a different variety of sports that they have good nous for where their ball is positioned, how to receive and give. They have a good concept of time and space. So I think those things over time are going to hold us in good stead.
And here you've got some great athletes involved, some like an NFL star, rugby union sevens players and whatnot. So how did you get these type of athletes on board?
I think they saw what we were doing, and we've been really big in diversifying. Like we don't consolidate just in Sao Paulo, which is what a lot of other sports do.
Right.
We get out to all the rural areas. We're welcoming of everyone, regardless of kind of what class they are. Whatever they're doing in their personal life, what cultural background they come from. For us, everyone's welcome, and we give all the clubs a very strong say in what we do. So I think that appealed to people from other sports that felt like maybe they were being ignored because they lived out of the limelight, or maybe their voice wasn't heard as much. And I think that's really been the key to our success is is embracing the diversity of the population in Brazil.
So, and you know, within Rugby League's ethos of being such an inclusive sport, which has done well.
Well, you think about football and how big that is in South America, and football is a working person's game, and I think that's how Rugby League fits into the equation as well.
Okay, excellent. So, Rob, you recently were in Brazil for 3 months running clinics and development courses. So, tell us about that experience.
Yeah, it's hugely fulfilling. It felt like every day was something achieved that hadn't happened before, and you're teaching people that are extremely thankful with a lot of potential. So for me, you know, I did it all for free, and I'd do it all again for free. In fact, you know, if things go to plan as far as the World Cup goes, I want to spend another 6 months over there just continuously doing the same thing, coming out to the clubs. You know, it doesn't hurt that the weather's fantastic, the food's awesome, and at the moment you get it's 4 hay ice to $1. So
right,
you know,
that's favourable.
Yeah, it's a good situation for anyone that wants to help out in Brazil.
Oh, fantastic. So, Rob, you know, Chasing Roos are a sponsor of Brazil, so we follow the Brazil team very closely and support them wherever we can. I've noticed the Brazil men's team is one of the most active nations this year in the international scene. You know, already a game against Uruguay, a game coming up against the Philippines, a game, is it Turkey? Another game?
Turkey, El Salvador.
So 4 games. So credit to everyone who was involved putting these games on. So how did all these games come about? You know, how come you guys are so active? It's fantastic.
Yeah, and I'll give you a little bit of a scoop too. So we're looking at South American Championships officially sanctioned by the International Rugby League. That'll happen in Jericho, Colombia in February of next year.
Wow.
So the winner of that will then go on to play in the America's Cup against USA, Jamaica, Canada.
Wow, fantastic.
So that would mean we would play Chile and Colombia as well. So that'll give us pretty much, five games in a calendar year, which is, for an international side, is right up there.
Yeah.
The impetus for so many games was Hugo Flores, who I mentioned was the operating officer in Brazil. He said to me, look, you know, we're in a bit of a bind. None of our players in Brazil can access international competition because of COVID restrictions. They're a red flag country.
Yeah.
So I want us to play as many games as possible outside, so people have a visibility of Brazil's capability, and we can start to climb up the ranks, because we're currently ranked, I think, 42, and we don't feel that's a totally fair reflection of where we are. So, you know, we're not saying we're going to knock over all the big boys, but we would like to be more competitive and play more often.
And I was at the Brazil-Uruguay game, and it was fantastic to see that a lot of the players were actually Brazilian born and raised that have just moved over to Australia for maybe a working holiday visa or work or whatever it may be, study. So, you know, in people's minds they think, oh, these guys are all Aussies with a Brazilian grandparent, but it was definitely not the case. A lot of them players were born and raised Brazilian, so that was fantastic to see.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a massive point, because Brazil doesn't have a history of migration spanning back more than 10 years to Australia. So everyone that arrives is brand new, and we've taught a lot of them from being international students who've arrived and said, I want to give a different sport a go. So really, it's not a team of, you know, 2nd or 3rd generation Brazilians. They're all straight out of Brazil, and really proud of how that group's come together.
Fantastic. So, Rob, can you just give our viewers a bit of a briefing of how the game's going domestically inside Brazil on both the men and the women's front? You know, from an outsider looking in, it seems to be going from strength to strength.
Yeah. I'd say if we didn't have COVID, the number of clubs would be going crazy, because we've already expanded from like 6 to 11 clubs in the space of just over 12 months.
Wow.
And we strongly placed our strategy around building with the women's game, which I think is a bit of a point of difference to most other nations. Is we actually get accused by the male players of putting the females first in a lot of things. So that's not a really strong rugby league stereotype you get.
Yeah.
But I think it's a winning strategy, because our women are at a level where they're able to compete with top 6 countries in the world, and the men are seeing what they're being able to achieve, and that's inspiring them in turn. So I think this year with the men's teams, Sao Paulo's come on really strong, and the final was Sao Paulo versus Rio in the men's, and never before in Brazil have we had the 2 biggest cities in the country playing the final together, and I think that added a bit of like extra spice to the whole occasion.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
So Rob, being an Australian-based Brazilian member of staff, you've obviously got your hands full with all the games coming up. So what's it like in Brazil for the women's preparation for the World Cup? How's that all coming along?
Yeah, they're doing semi-finals this weekend as we speak, which is Magic Weekend. Might be a bit delayed by the time the video comes out.
Yeah.
But we'll name the 40-woman squad. They'll go into a COVID-safe bubble for this whole week. Then they'll play the grand final next week. And from the 40-woman squad, we'll start chipping down until we get to 24 final players who will travel over to England. And so for them, a lot of them are still so early in their rugby league phase. They're fully matured athletically, but they need to get those finer points of rugby league down. So we felt just identifying a group really early before the World Cup and working with them consistently would be the best way to go.
And I noticed recently on social media that the women's players have been exposed to Pau Mary in Portuguese.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. How did that all come about?
Oh, it's fantastic. So obviously mutual friend Joanna Lester, she said, would the girls like to watch it? And I thought, yeah, it's perfect because the road that PNG have travelled is very similar, very similar issues to what we face in Brazil as well in terms of, class and gender issues. So when that opportunity came up, one of Joanna's staff just kind of put her hand up and said, oh, I can speak Portuguese. And we didn't know before that, which was amazing. And she translated the whole video for us, which is a huge effort. So we haven't paid a cent for it. And they've done that out of the kindness of their heart to develop International Rugby League for a team that will oppose them at the World Cup. So that's testament to the kind of, unity we have amongst the developing nations.
Yeah, no, it's great to see, when the like that example where developing nations help each other out just for the betterment of the game, not for any agendas or whatnot. It's just they want to see the game grow, and it's fantastic to see. I know for one, I'll definitely be tuning in to see how the Amazonas get on in the World Cup, and I'd like to wish them all the very best.
Perfect.
So we'll see how they go.
Thanks a lot.
So Rob, just on the Women's World Cup, after looking at the draw, Brazil have got, being relatively new to Women's Rugby League, have got a powerhouse in England in their first game at Headingley. So, how the girls, once they've seen the draw, what are they thinking?
Oh, super excited, but you can only imagine the amount of adrenaline that's going to be rushing through their system when they go out there. A lot of these girls have not travelled internationally at all. Suddenly they're going to be on the other side of the world. They've never seen snow, never seen Big Ben or any of the other things that we're hoping to get down to London and see as well. Yeah. And for them, I think playing the home team in front of what's expected to be at least a 20,000 person crowd is going to be massive, intense, but great opportunity for them to show who they are and what Brazil's all about.
Wow, well, it's going to be great. A great experience, and for all the players that end up going to the World Cup, it's just going to be something that's going to be with them for the rest of their lives, and I hope they do really well. So Rob, I'd just like to thank you for your time, for coming on the show today. You're a true unsung hero of International Rugby League, and that's what our show's about, is telling these journeys and stories, and it's been a pleasure having you on, and thanks very much.
Thanks, mate. Cheers. What's up?
Cheers.